Good morning and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. Thank you guys so much for joining me here on this Prayer with Friday. I know we've been going through a little bumps and bruises with my office moving and internet changing, but thank you so much for hanging in there with me and joining me this morning. So with that, let's get into our trending topics on X. So for the first article, this is Georgia-based, and this gentleman right here, this is our current Secretary of State who is running for governor. And it says, someone in Georgia explained to me why it's okay we are voting on the QR codes on May 19th, but we can't in July for special election. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go back over the past 5 years and discuss the timeline in Georgia. So in 2020, Judge Amy Totenberg raised serious constitutional security and voter verification concerns about Georgia's Dominion QR code voting system in Curling versus Raffensperger. The current discussed concerns that voters cannot actually verify the QR codes and whether votes are being accurately counted as cast. For years, election security experts continue warning about vulnerabilities in the system. And even as recently as winter of 2025, during the Curling versus Raffensperger trial. In 2024, the Georgia legislature passed a law requiring QR codes to be phased out by July 1st, 2026. This means they had 2.5 years to get it done. Raffensperger repeatedly has said he does not have the funding to implement the required changes. But yet Kemp and the legislature do not force a solution, provide funding, or hold anyone accountable. And here we are, and a crisis is looming. Please, right? Georgia is still allowing people to vote using the QR code system on May 19th, 2026 for the primaries. But suddenly we are told by July that the law absolutely must be followed immediately for a special election. Now, the very crisis they have created is being used to make Kemp look like some kind of white knight hero riding in at the last minute wearing a cape to save the election system. For the love of all that is holy, Georgia leadership created this mess, 3 years of delay, excuses, and inaction. So they didn't follow the law for years, but now they have to follow the law. Got it. I was born in the morning, but not this morning. Don't buy the BS. There are no heroes that wear capes. Definitely not in Georgia. And what's interesting is I actually know somebody who's a part of the state board of elections. The thing is, they do not control how the county and the cities carry out their elections. The problem with the machines, and here's my problem with QR codes overall. I can't read a QR code. I need my phone, electronic device, in order to look at where the QR code is going and what's happening with it, which actually takes the internet to do. And you've told us that there's no internet involved, so there can't be anything wrong. We're not stupid, as Amy was saying. Now, when I voted, and I voted early, there were not one, but 3 QR codes on my ballot that I cannot read. And that's the problem. If I can't read it, it shouldn't be on my ballot. And it doesn't take a lot of money. You know what it takes? It takes a button push on the administrative side and a click of a button to say, don't use the QR code feature. That's it. That's it. There's nothing else about it. That's it. And yet they make all this fuss about the QR code, telling us that there's no interference going on in our election. If I can't read something on my ballot, it shouldn't be on my ballot. Now, with that, I think the citizens of Georgia need to sue, if we have to, the state of Georgia as the citizens, because you are invalidating our votes. If I can't read it, and I can't bring my phone with me, right? You tell us you can't bring your phone with you, but the only thing that can read the QR code is my phone, so that I can see what my vote is, where it's going, and why it's going there. But I need the internet also with my QR code, or it won't work, because it doesn't work offline. It has to be online to work. But you can't explain to me why the QR codes are on my ballot. You can't. All you do, it's just to keep you safe. That's a whole lie. A whole lie. I've worked in compliance. And if you can't guarantee my safety, first of all, in anything. So you can say it can help to keep my vote safe. But you can't say that there's safety in it, because I can't read it, nor can you as a human. So we have a problem. We have an impasse. But people aren't asking the right questions, in my opinion. So she's got some screenshots here. Bring them up. So lawmakers take next steps with bill that could ban QR codes from election ballots despite Secretary of State criticism. And this was again in 2024. Removing QR codes from Georgia ballots could cost taxpayers $66 million. Why would it cost us any money when it's a click of a button? That's literally all it is. It's a click of a button. There's no software updates whatsoever. It's a feature, and you turn it off. We're not dumb. But here we are. And that was in 2025. Okay, when this article happened. And this is a 2024. Georgia Secretary of State says it's unconstitutional for board to oversee him, but lawmakers differ. This is the same person that is running for governor of Georgia. Yeah. No, I'm good. I'm good. And then in 2024, Georgia bill to strip QR codes from ballots would cost tens of millions of dollars. The price could reach $300 million, says top state election official, the legislature has allocated $0 and set a 2-year deadline. Yeah, because it doesn't cost money to do this. It is a feature. Turn it off. It has already been determined that it's a feature. When they want to scare people, they talk about how much it costs, but they never get the job done, even though our tax dollars are there. I'm just saying, get it done. This is stupid. Okay. Let's see. This next one, actually, this is a repost by Elon Musk. Sanders and AOC introduced a bill to pause all AI data center construction. 300 plus local bills filed. Half of planned 2026 data centers facing delays or cancellation. Each one brings billions to local economies. Yeah, I'm okay with that. When you're saying, yeah. See, I'm okay with that because the data centers don't help us. It's a utility. And it's going to be something that not only we're giving them tax breaks, we're paying for to create. Later on, we're going to have to pay to use it. We already pay fees to use AI as it stands. Now, if you can make the data center so where they don't destroy the environment, literally, like water, okay, an eminent domain where it's taking people's homes, if you can make the data center so it's not harmful to humans, we will reconsider the conversation. But yeah, I'm okay with this bill to pause the data centers because we don't know enough about them and the long-term effects of the data centers. We don't know why we're using them. And I personally don't have a quantum computer. So why do we need so many data centers? It doesn't produce anything. It's not producing a car. It's not producing food. It's not making the environment any better. What is it really for? And so you really haven't explained yourself in that. And that's the thing that people have questions on. Now, this is Dom Luker. He's breaking narrative. Let me see. Pause this video really quick. It says, prolific conservative commentator Laverne Spicer's husband has passed away. Oh, praying for her. Mrs. Spicer has been giving back to the homeless here in Miami for over 30 years. Her husband was her backbone. She is still going outside to help these people in need. This is Liberty City, one of the most dangerous places in Miami, yet she still comes out to help. A GoFundMe has started for her. This is her second time in my career that I have physically come out to assist with raising funds. I will give and continue to give because I know she does work. I will be adding her link below so everyone can give if they are able. Thank you all for your time. So let's hear from Mrs. Spicer.
Food for my community, and each and every month we feed over 5,000 people. Recently, my husband, Dr. Spicer, passed, and he always helped to operate the programs, the logistics, day-to-day operation. He did everything, and also he would get up very early in the morning, unload the trucks. Even if it was 40 or 50 pallets, he could do it by himself. But now I have to hire help to help us operate this project.
And for the people that's following, there are, as we know, there's a lot of scams on the internet. I live down here in Miami, and this is one of the few movements, and I see tons of them. Truly, being a journalist, I see genuinely thousands of them. This is one of the few that's tangible. I can come down and see myself, that you can come and make a change on. And you know, Miss Spicer's been doing this for years. If you ask anyone in Miami, they know who she is. They know what the Curly House is. This is a staple of the city. I'm telling you, as someone that's become a Miami local, prior to even moving to Miami, everyone around knew what this house was and what it means to the community. Losing this is detrimental to the entire community. She's doing more than most of the governments are doing, and that's despite of which administration. Doesn't matter if it's Biden, doesn't matter if it's Trump. She's been here for the people, no matter what the political narrative is. She's been here feeding people. that are desperately in need. And without her, God only knows what might happen to them. And she's truly a woman in need. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure this keep going. Her husband was an amazing man that truly cared about these people. And I tell you, how many people truly go through grief and still put their foot first and think of the next man instead of themselves. I come down here, the first thing she say is things about the operation and not herself. That says everything about her character, everything about this woman, and every reason on why this is the type of person we need to help. I'm passionate about this one. I don't even stand by donations. I don't stand by any fundraisers. But this is one worthy cause that I feel like everyone needs to give to. I'm going to give myself. You'll be able to find the public record. And I'm going to continue to give because this is something that I truly have a passion about. I believe she's doing God's work and she deserves some recognition for it. And overall, some condolences for her loss because he was a great man. He helped this thing run. She's definitely going to need some help. This is a wife without her husband and also a leader of the community without her assistant. So definitely let's be here for Mrs. Spicer, whether you be conservative, hell, whether you be black or damn whether you be American. We need to be here for her and make this thing happen.
And, you know, like Dawn said, it doesn't matter if you're black, white, Republican, or Democrat. At the end of the day, it's all about the people. These seniors need our help. They have worked all of their life to take care of everybody. Most of them are on the fixed income and only get $5 a month. So without our help here, these people would be hungry. They would be starving. They wouldn't have anything to eat. This is a ministry that blesses so many people. And we are operating this program on a shoestring budget. So please give today. Please give today. So thank you so much for whatever you would like to do to help. We are so grateful.
And you know, it's organizations like hers that don't get the money. But then we hear about other organizations that squander the money and don't do anything for the community at all. So my plea is to anybody out there who knows of maybe a state contract to help homelessness or even a government contract for homelessness, right? So that their operation can actually thrive. Because right now in the state of California, they're spending close to $90,000 per homeless person. And their homeless population has grown. Do you think that's because they really want to end it? They don't end it. They're making too much money off of the people that are homeless. So they want homelessness. They don't want it eradicated. She's at least doing her best to help those that are on fixed income, like she said, and are homeless. So let's make sure you follow Don Luker and on his, I want to say it's more than likely going to be on his page and in his timeline, where you can find out more information about this organization. And let's definitely keep Mrs. Spicer in our prayers, especially since she's recently lost her husband. All right. And so with that, thank you for hanging out with me on Trending Topics on X. And now the next piece of news we're going to go into our Promethean updates.
Of things which are happening. You've got Fauci's chief assistant indicted. Okay, you have this grand conspiracy case going forward in Florida in which John Brennan, who came out and said, we have the resistance in the government and it's active and that's how we're going to meet this thing. He's going to be indicted in Florida in this conspiracy case, first of all, about Russiagate. And that is all on Tulsi Gabbard's plate. That is who actually got us to where we are. And the way that they're fighting back is by attacking her. You saw this thing as Trump was in China yesterday, where it was claimed that the CIA ran into her office and stole a ton of files, okay, and just took them and illegally invaded her. Now, both she and John Radcliffe came out and denied this. But if you look at Laura Loomer this morning, you can see the plot, right? Trump is over in China. He wants the headlines. Tulsi tried to steal the headlines by doing this stuff. She should be fired, okay? That's because the woman has actually declassified the essence of the evidence, which is going to be used to go after Brennan in South Florida. You have this huge fraud task force, which J.D. Vance is leading and went out yesterday with. And they're setting up, folks, to indict the entire damn Democratic Party. If you actually look at what is being set up here, you've had massive fraud in the Democratic states around COVID, around Medicare and Medicaid. But you have people who are on Medicaid driving around in Lamborghinis in California. And this, in turn, in terms of kickbacks, is how the Democratic Party has actually funded itself. If you look at Biden's Green New Deal and the legislation for that, you see their entire vision of the economy was going to be, we'll give you a handout because we can't build an economy where you could work with some dignity. If you can tell us that you're carrying the groceries for your elderly parent, all right, we'll give you a huge handout for you to do that, all right, as opposed to we'll train you to actually become part of the new economy we're building and to join in the mission to get to and build a colony on Mars. Which one of those models do you think has most excitement for a younger generation, which really needs revival in terms of its fundamental curiosity and its enthusiasm for life? These are the types of things which we're facing, but I'm very confident that you are going to see cuts. It may not be all the people you want, but I just think we're in good shape.
Okay. And I wanted to look a little bit deeper into what she was saying. And so I went to Grok just to get, some of the people she was talking about. Now, the first prosecution she was talking about was Fauci's chief assistant, and that person has already been indicted, and they were tied to broader accountability efforts around COVID-related issues. Now, we all know Fauci, due to the statute of limitations, cannot be tried because he waited too long. Interesting how that happened. But there are other things that he actually can be held accountable for. So I don't think he's truly off the hook. Now, John Browner, former CIA director, expected to be indicted in a grand conspiracy case in Florida, and he's primarily linked to Russiagate, alleged conspiracy involving the Russia investigation. And the speaker claims Brennan publicly referenced an active resistance in government. Tulsi Gabbard is credited with helping declassify key evidence for this case. Now, broader Democratic Party fraud cases, a huge task force led by J.D. Vance, as mentioned, as setting up indictments. The targets massive fraud in Democratic-led states related to COVID funds, Medicare and Medicaid, right? And examples are allegedly living lavishly, like driving Lamborghinis in California, alleged kickback schemes that supposedly funded the Democratic Party, and a potential to indict the entire Democratic Party through these investigations. Now, Tulsi Gabbard is portrayed as central to declassifying evidence and facing pushback, including disputed claims of a CIA raid on her office. And I totally believe that they raided her office because CIA is trash. I'm sorry. Again, that whole organization needs to be, everybody in the CIA needs to go to prison right now, like today, and face questioning and indictments. Like, we need to have a Nuremberg 2.0 with the CIA, the entire CIA, before they start burning and destroying actual records and documents, because these people are lunatics. They are the fourth arm of government, in my opinion. The government that you don't see. They are the thems that people talk about when they say, oh, them and they. It's the CIA, in my opinion. Sorry, whenever things get weird, it always ends up in the CIA. Just saying. Now, this next article I want to get into is Representative Luna, and she's talking about an internal coup.
Testified that the U.S. intelligence covered up information that pointed to a lab leak. That's right. It wasn't bat soup that caused the whole world to lock down. It was the government and a reckless and experimental lab in Wuhan, China. So why would our own intelligence community cover up for China at the expense of American lives? Earlier today, I spoke with Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna to see what she had to say. But first, she came to us with some pretty shocking breaking news. It's about files pertaining to the assassination of JFK and MK Ultra, which was the CIA's human experimentation program. We have learned since our interview with Luna, the CIA marched into the National Reconnaissance Office warehouse in the middle of the night and took files under the jurisdiction of DNI Tulsi Gabbard. It was not a raid, and it did not happen today, but it did happen, and the files were not given back. Take a listen to my interview with Congresswoman Luna when we first heard the news. Before we get to the CIA whistleblower about the COVID-19 pandemic and Dr. Anthony Fauci's role in the cover-up, you also have some news coming out of the CIA that you'd like to share.
Yeah, so we were actually just notified that the CIA went in and took documents out of ODNI, multiple boxes pertaining to the JFK files as well as MK Ultra. The reason why this is troubling is there was an executive order that the president had directed the full declassification of JFK, but then also to the MK Ultra files. The CIA famously has said that, all documents were released and other documents had been destroyed. So these are allegedly those documents that apparently never existed, and so very troubling. I did just talk to Chairman Comer, and we are sending in the next hour or so a preservation of documents request to the CIA. I have calls into the White House, to the director of the CIA himself, and so obviously as this develops, we'll keep everyone up to date, but strange times we're living in, that's for sure.
Does the CIA have jurisdiction to go into Gabbard's office like that and take documentation?
Well, the CIA does not have jurisdiction to work against an executive order by the president. And so the fact that someone did this when the president is out of country, from what I gather, I believe that Director Radcliffe is with him. And so this seems like it was an internal coup, to be honest.
Okay, well, we will certainly be watching that. Thank you for sharing. Also today, we saw testimony from a CIA whistleblower. Let's listen to what he had to say and get your response.
Public health policy would have been very different had the American public been made aware that a virus from a lab in China was going to serve as the foundation for an emergency use authorization mRNA products being mandated by the former administration.
So, Congresswoman, I'm grateful for the transparency. It's very difficult to come out as a whistleblower because you face consequences, retaliation, which we'll get to in just a second. But we've known for many years that Dr. Fauci indeed covered up the pandemic for obvious reasons. He was funding gain-of-function research illegally at the Wuhan lab. It got out of control. They Frankensteined a virus, and it ended up killing millions of people and shutting down the world and damaging future generations in terms of education. The consequences are very far-reaching. There's no new news on the front that Fauci covered this up, but he can't really face that many consequences because Joe Biden gave him a pardon.
I think what Dr. Fauci did was on the level of human rights abuses and violations, and there is still a question on whether or not Joe Biden physically signed that pardon. We know that on our investigations on House oversight, many of the pardons are exact or identical matches with signatures, meaning that it's not possible unless it's done by something called AutoPen. I think that that's something that Todd Blanche needs to bring charges on. He is the acting attorney general now, and that's something that he can do, or at least look at these pardons as null and void if they were not exactly signed by the president. To my knowledge, one of the few that are legitimate are the ones on Hunter Biden, but the other ones are called to question as whether or not they were actually authorized by the president himself. And so I think as we move forward and as this continues to come out, the American people know what happened, even people that not necessarily are conservative or Republican, see what happened with COVID-19, and it's a lesson that we can all learn from, but there are very real human rights abuses that Dr. Fauci committed, and he should be held accountable. He should be in jail.
And it's a shame that Democrats refuse to show up to this hearing today to get to the bottom of what exactly happened, to hold people accountable for exactly the reasons you just laid out. But Erdman, who's a whistleblower, spoke today about retaliation within the CIA. This is what he said.
The analysts that supported the 2023 lab leak conclusion took every administrative measure available to them to address their deep concerns regarding the analytic integrity of their finished intelligence. CIA managers retaliated against them.
And we also know that bribes were offered from Fauci to scientists to change their opinions as well. But based on what you told me at the beginning of this conversation with the CIA and this testimony from the whistleblower today, it seems there's a major problem going on inside the agency with politicizing intelligence and making these decisions for political purposes rather than just following the intelligence and the facts where they may lead.
Oh, most certainly. Exactly what you just laid out is also known as the deep state, and there's a flush that needs to occur at the agency. I like Director Radcliffe. He's a great man. He's been doing a great job, but he is one man, and there needs to be massive instrumental changes and shakeups at the agency. I think the deputy director of the CIA needs to be backing Radcliffe up on those changes. But what I will tell you today, and just hearing what I heard about the overt efforts to undermine the president's executive order specifically pertaining to JFK, or I don't know, Congress's order to release and request the MLK or the MK Ultra files, all of that should tell you everything you need to know about the agency and that it still operates, so it seems, out of the purview and jurisdiction of the executive branch, of the congressional branch, and that is unacceptable, of the legislative branch, excuse me, and it's unacceptable. And so, as you saw, Comer is working on that subpoena with me. We will send it in the morning if we don't hear back from the CIA. But either which way, we will find out who went into Tulsi's office and took those files. If this person, and this is not a threat, this is going to happen, if those files are not returned within the next 24 hours, you will be called, your faces will be made public in front of the entire American people. All of Congress will see it, and we will hold you accountable for going against a direct executive order by the president and interfering with a congressional investigation. So return the files. Do not destroy documents. You will get a preservation of documents notice for Congress, and any member of the CIA that engages in undermining this investigation will be held criminally accountable. And I'm also waiting for a call back from Todd Blanche, the acting attorney general. We are not playing games with you. Return the documents.
All right. Well, Congressman Anna Polina Luna, great to see you. Thank you for joining us as always. Talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below.
And that city that you saw in the background, that was Beijing. I was like, is that Los Angeles? Oh no, that's Beijing. It's dirty. That's nasty. We all need to figure something out. I mean, that just looks gross. Yeah. But anyway, to the CIA, look, like I said, the agency needs to be completely disbanded. Everybody needs to be arrested. Period. You are entitled to an attorney, but everybody needs to be arrested because they've just been causing so many things for decades. Since their inception, they have been nothing but a cesspool and a fourth arm of government that thinks that they can just do whatever they want to do. The Central Intelligence Agency has not been prosperous, nor has it been beneficial for the American people. It has only been a tool that can be used by those who want to undermine our government. Period. The end. And going in and stealing government documents is just probably one thing that they know about. What about all the other stuff that they've been involved in? Yeah, it's crazy. It's insane. Now, the next article I want to get to, this is a questioning back and forth between Representative Omar and the Secretary of Education. Now, this is talking about the nursing degrees. And there's been a little bit of controversy about it when it happened. But what the Department of Education did, and I'll go into this a little bit more, is they took the degree out of the professional status. They're not saying that a nurse is not professional. They took the degree out of that status so that schools couldn't charge the amount for that degree, right? So let's just talk about a law degree or a medical degree, actually, right? Let's keep it to medical. So if someone's going to school to be a doctor, there is a particular professional degree that they need to get to attain to be a physician, right? Well, they had nursing degrees in that same category. By putting them in that same category, people were being overcharged for a nursing degree. So they took them out of that category so that nurses could still attain the degree without the cost. That's kind of the simple crux of the matter. Ilhan Omar's argument is we don't have enough people going into nursing. You don't have enough people going into nursing because we've lost our humanity. And you really have to have some humanity to be a nurse because you're taking care of other people. Our children can't read or write at the level that they need to be a nurse, even a doctor. The educational system has failed the children that can be our future nurses and doctors. They can't read or write. They're only at a 5th grade reading level. You have to be at a high school level or above for a lot of these positions because of the linguistics involved, the medications. You have to know how to research. You have to understand what you're doing because you're administering, right, medications to these patients. You have to understand how to read charts. You have to understand how to read measurements so that you don't accidentally overdose a patient. You need the acumen. We do not have educated adults to do the work. But you're not talking about that part. You just want to have an argument with the Secretary of the Department of Education. But let's check this out.
Is the gentlelady from Minnesota, Ms. Omar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, sorry to belabor this. I know so many people on both sides of the aisle have asked you about the department's decision to remove nursing, teaching, social work, and other critical occupations from the definition of professional degrees and capping their ability to receive federal loans. I know that in my home state of Minnesota, we're expecting to face a shortage of 30,000 nurses in the next 4 years. And I know that your home state of North Carolina, it is expected to see a shortage of 13,000. Our nurses obviously are limited in their capacity, they're overworked, and they're worried. So I know you said the decision is final, but I'm just trying to figure out if you can answer, why did you move forward with an action that you know is going to be creating a problem or worsening a problem that already exists?
Well, first of all, let me correct one thing. We did not remove any of these professions from a professional category. They were never characterized in the law, in the statute, as a professional category. So as these caps were put into place, and many professions were then being reviewed as to what constituted a professional category guided by the definition of a professional degree from Congress. So that was the overview that we looked at as we were writing this new rulemaking with the overall goal of putting caps in place that are going to reduce the cost of college.
How is that happening?
Well, I have a couple of articles here already that there are colleges.
What do they say?
They are saying that they are looking at reducing the cost of their graduate program.
I know, but looking is not addressing the problem that we're currently seeing. What I am asking you is that you've made a decision that is currently making the problem worse.
That is not correct. Let me push back on that.
Are you saying the numbers in Minnesota that we're seeing or in North Carolina are not real?
Well, what I'm saying to you is there are shortages in those states, primarily in the undergraduate nursing program, which is not affected by this new rule and this new cap. Undergraduate programs are not affected at all by this
I know,
cap.
but
These
can
are
you
only graduate programs,
you,
so the shortage is not a result of this cap being put on. The shortage of nursing is that we don't have enough applicants into the nursing programs that are coming through our universities.
So instead of helping with the problem, you've decided to
No, and
make it
there's,
worse?
I don't think you ran when I talked about another way to get to an RN, an expedited program. You can get a 2-year certificate and then take the exam to become an
My
RN.
sisters are nurses.
And if-
I do know how those things work.
and if
I'm
you
asking
do-
you about this specific classification that you created that lowers the cap.
We didn't remove them
That's-
from a professional designation.
I know, but address the cap issue when it comes to the,
I just did because
the
I said it
professions I
does
just
not
talked about.
impact.
But you
the
said you were trying to
undergraduate
lower
program.
the cost of tuition. How does
Absolutely.
that happen?
Because there are already colleges that are lowering the cost of their graduate programs because they are.
What are those colleges?
There's a college in California, University of California in Irvine, and Purdue University in Indiana.
And is it for business or for
They have
nursing?
lowered them right now and for their business programs. I
Yeah,
hope
but we're
that they'll-
talking about nursing, ma'am.
Well, I hope that they'll look at other programs to
Because
reduce their
business is
costs.
not something that you had an impact on.
I don't have control over which programs they're doing, but if they have fewer applicants coming into their universities and they realize part of the reason is because their cost is too high, they will lower those costs.
I don't think that is how it works.
It is exactly how it
That is
works.
not how it works.
It is
your
supply-
your
it is supply
specific
and
job
demand. It is supply
is your
and
specific
demand.
job is to try to make sure, as the head of the Department of Education, to make education accessible for Americans. When you create policies that make education unreachable for Americans that want that education, then you are failing at your job.
No, when there have not been caps on programs and universities have been allowed to charge whatever they wanted, and the student loan program allowed them to borrow up to whatever that university said was the cost, it was time to take action and to put caps in place that are going
Yeah,
to
but your
start-
caps only create a funnel through the private borrowing system.
That's not true.
Yes, that is what it will do. How else
It's
would somebody,
putting
if
the
if I wanted to get a professional degree
Ah.
and I'm capped and I can't borrow, then I have to, from a public source, then I have to go private.
And
And
I-
that is what your administration is really trying to do, is trying to
No.
help enrich others on the backs of the American people. I yield back.
Okay. But, okay. Okay. So, the U.S. Department of Education has not directly capped tuition on program costs for nursing degrees. Instead, it has implemented new federal student loan borrowing limits, right, for graduate programs, and that's effective this July. The explicit goal is to reduce overall college costs and student debt by limiting how much students can borrow federally. So let's just say the limit's $50,000 for a nursing degree, which is pretty outrageous, but let's just say it's that. Then that means the school is capped at $50,000 for that degree. Now, if a school is still charging more than $50,000, that's where the problem comes in. Why are you charging more than $50,000 when another school over here is charging $25,000 for the same degree? Right? Same degree. Why are you charging $50,000? Why are you charging $25,000? The caps are in place so people are not in egregious amounts of debt. Period. And they shouldn't be borrowing more for school, because if they are, you got to look at the school. Okay? It's the school. And a lot of schools have come under scrutiny. They have been sued, and they have gotten their doors closed. They have had their accreditations removed. Representative Omar, do your homework. But you don't want to do that. You want to have an argument, and you look interesting. And I'm looking forward to you being denaturalized, deported, and removed from Congress. Like, that's all I want for Christmas right now. Okay, so this creates market pressure on institutions to lower tuition as unlimited borrowing. Okay, especially via the former Grad Plus loans. had allowed schools to raise prices. So schools were basically milking these students and making money off of the federal government by doing it. But leaving these students with all of this debt that they can barely get out of once they achieve the job. It shouldn't be that way. Now, in the One Big Beautiful Bill, a final rise rule. So it's the elimination of Grad Plus loans. This previously allowed unlimited federal borrowing for graduate and professional students. That's why it was taken out of this category, especially for nurses, right? Which the department says fueled tuition inflation. Tiered loan limits based on whether a program qualifies as a professional degree. That's the problem. It's not that it's not a profession, it's the degree, right? So professional degrees narrowly defined as 11 specific fields: medicine, MD, dentistry, pharmacy, veterinarian medicine, law, optometry, osteopathic medicine, podiatry, chiropractic, clinical psychology, and theology, up to $50,000 per year and $200,000 in the aggregate. So all other graduate degrees, including nursing programs such as MSN, DNP, PhD in nursing, capped at $20,500 per year and $100,000 in the aggregate total. I think that's better than putting people in perpetual debt. So nursing is explicitly excluded from the higher professional degree category. The department argues this is based on statutory census definitions, not a judgment on the value of nursing. Nurses are still very much professional. They have what they call, the name is escaping me. You go to the doctor's office, you can see a nurse practitioner, right? Instead of your doctor. And they can work pretty much in the same capacity as a doctor. They're just working under the doctor. It's almost like a paralegal, right? When you're in a lawyer's office, that's how the nurse practitioners work. It's not belittling their profession. It's capping the cost that a college can charge them. That's all. And that's better for everybody in the long run, because people may see cost as a barrier to them even getting the education. But again, like I said, we're turning out people that have less than a 5th grade education in reading. How are they supposed to be nurses or doctors? This is why you don't have the applicants. They can't read or write. They probably can't even fill out an application to go to school. Yeah, this is why your numbers are low, but you don't want to look at that. We are turning out an entire generation of illiterate people here in a country where we spend more per capita per person on education. And our children can't read or write. Hey, but they can tell you their program. Yeah. The indoctrination needs to stop. We need to get back to education, period. Now, institutions can set even lower pragmatic caps if they choose to better align the program outcomes and earnings potential. So, put it this way. If your profession is going to garner you after you graduate $80,000 a year, in my opinion, you shouldn't be paying more than $20,000 a year for your degree. Right? The degree should at least, at some point, it's not going to guarantee you, but it should at least give you the potential earnings of an $80,000 job. Then that way you can pay off the degree without, struggling. Right? It should be a fourth of whatever the outcome is for the job potential. That's where I'm at. But nobody's really looking at those rates. They just assume, just like the department, the Secretary of Education was saying, we cannot force these colleges to do it, but we can put caps in place so that they will be held accountable to it. Right? Now, the Department of Education stated rationale. Department data shows 95% of nursing students and a high percentage of graduate nursing students already borrow below the new annual limits. So most are not affected. So why would we even have this conversation, Ella? The remaining high-cost programs will be incentivized to reduce tuition to maintain enrollment, preventing students from taking on unmanageable debt. This is part of a broader package, including simplified repayment options aimed at lowering college costs across the board, right? And they've been doing this for a long time because there are professions that you can go into, like teaching. There are certain nursing and doctor degrees and other degrees that you can go into where you can work for nonprofit organizations and have your student loan debt lowered, right? Or almost paid off. Here's the kicker though. If you do that, you still have to pay the taxes on that tuition. So it's almost like, okay, we'll pay it down. So say you've got $95,000, right, in student loans. They'll pay down the $95,000, right? So you don't have to pay it back after you worked in the profession for so many years for this nonprofit, but you have to pay the taxes on that $95,000 stuff. So they're still getting their money on the back end. It's not that they're not getting money, but that's what they've been doing. Now, next, I wanted to get into this article that I came across from Epic Real Estate talking about Mr. Powell of the Federal Reserve and the bombshell that he has, I guess, dropped.
Look, the financial press is calling it a routine personnel change at the Federal Reserve. Jerome Powell's term ends. Kevin Warsh, Trump's pick, takes over. Move along. Nothing to see here. But I think we've been lied to about what just quietly happened between these two men. Because what Powell did on April 29th was the first time a Fed chair has done it in 78 years. And what Warsh said the week before should have made every saver in this country sit up straight. Three things hit on the same day. The Federal Reserve held rates at 3.75%. 4 committee members voted against the chair, the most dissents at a single meeting since October of 1992, a time when Achy Breaky Heart was terrorizing the radio and we still collectively thought slap bracelets were a viable fashion choice. And in his press conference, Jerome Powell had one last thing to say before he leaves on May 15th. He announced he isn't leaving. He's keeping his vote through January of 2028. So let's read the box score on that one. The man who's supposed to walk out the door in just a few days isn't walking out the door. And by staying, Powell is delivering a message to the man taking his job. And that message changes everything about what we were expecting to happen to our money over the next decade, let alone the next 12 months. Powell didn't ask for permission to stay. He doesn't need it. His chair term ends May 15th, but his governor term runs through January of 28. And by law, the president cannot fire a sitting Fed governor over policy disagreements. Powell holds the keys. Trump can't take them. He can only wait Powell out or pressure him out, both of which are happening right now in public. So here are the questions we need to answer to figure out what's really going on. First, why is a man who could walk into a corporate board seat and a quiet retirement choosing to stay and dissent? Who is Kevin Warsh actually? And what did he say in his confirmation hearing that made Powell decide 21 more months of votes was worth the fight? Has this ever happened before in American history? And when it did, what happened to the dollar? And the question that might matter the most, why is JP Morgan quietly telling its billionaire clients to move 60% of their portfolios out of the dollar in the same week? Now, these are the questions. There's no leaked memo with the answers. There's no transcript of a private conversation, but the actions are speaking so loudly. Does it matter what anyone says? I mean, I can show you what I'm seeing, and then you can decide for yourself. Because what's happening isn't so much about a Fed personnel change as it is about whether the firewall that protects your dollar from politicians still works, and what to do with your money while we find out. And whether Powell's stand holds or fails decides whether the dollars sitting in your savings account today buy the same groceries next year or half as many, if you're lucky. So let's start with the first question. What did Powell actually see? Well, on May 15th, the man who's been running the most powerful institution in your financial life, Jerome Powell, packs up his office and moves down the hall. And the man, Kevin Warsh, walking in, taking his seat, just told the United States Senate on tape that he wants to do something to the dollar that hasn't been attempted in 78 years. So here's what Powell saw. A president who'd spent 2 years trying to fire him. A DOJ probe that tried to use a building renovation as a removal pretext. A Treasury secretary openly demanding loyalty. And now a successor walking in promising regime change at the institution that anchors your dollar. 4 moves, 2 years, all in one direction. Powell saw a Federal Reserve being slowly captured, and he understood that walking out the door meant handing over the last line of defense. So he made a choice. On April 29th at his press conference, Powell looked at the cameras and said, and I'm quoting directly, "I had long planned to be retiring. The things that have happened really in the last 3 months have, I think, left me no choice but to stay." For 75 years, every Fed chair has done the same thing on their last day, cleaned out the office, handed over the gavel, and left the building. Powell isn't doing any of that. He's keeping a voting seat on the Board of Governors through January of 28. 21 more months of votes. 21 more months of public dissents if he wants them. And look, this isn't a small move. The last Fed chair who refused to leave the board after his term ended was Mariner Eccles, 1948, 78 years ago. Truman pushed Eccles out as chair, and Eccles said, "Fine, I'll stop being chair, but I'm not leaving." He kept his seat, he kept his vote, and he kept a spare key to the dollar. That's exactly what Powell just did. But why would he do that? What is Powell afraid the new chair will do? Who is Warsh, really? Kevin Warsh has been packaged on the news recently as a serious institutionalist. Stanford, Harvard Law, former Fed governor, financial crisis veteran, the official story. But there's a different story buried in his actual statements on the record. April 21st, Senate Banking Committee, Warsh's confirmation hearing. He's asked about inflation. He answers, and I'm quoting again, "I think that means a regime change in the conduct of policy. I think that means a different new inflation framework." Regime change, not policy adjustment. Regime change, that is not a phrase you want to hear applied to the institution anchoring your money. You want to hear regime change applied to the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, or perhaps a problematic local HOA, not the US dollar. This is the man who's about to take over the institution that decides what your dollar is worth. And he's not coming from a university. He's a partner at Stanley Druckenmiller's hedge fund, one of the most powerful macro investors alive. The man about to lead the Federal Reserve has spent the last 15 years thinking about how to profit from Fed decisions, not how to make them. And here's the part nobody mentioned. In 2018, long before any of this, Warsh was asked by Politico whether Trump understood the historical importance of Fed independence. In his exact words, "This might be a good time for a no comment." Now you can read that 2 ways. Either Warsh knew Trump didn't respect Fed independence and took the job anyway, or Trump knew Warsh had said it on the record and picked him anyway. Both reads are uncomfortable. Both reads end with the same Fed chair walking into the building on May 16th. It's tough to tell what this means explicitly unless you have precedent. Has this happened before? Because that would be our biggest clue. Well, fortunately, there is a playbook that decides whether your dollar makes it through. And the man who wrote it did exactly what Powell just did. It was back in 1951. Picture this. Mariner Eccles, 3 years removed from being chair, sitting on the board as regular governor, gets called to the White House. Truman's there. The entire Federal Open Market Committee is there. The president wants the Fed to keep interest rates pegged low to finance the Korean War. Inflation is running at 21%. Eccles knows the Fed can't manage both. So the meeting ends, and Truman walks to the press and says the Federal Open Market Committee, or FOMC, this is the Federal Reserve's monetary policy-making body, they pledged its support. And it was a total fabrication. The committee made no such pledge. So Eccles does something nobody expected. He releases the committee's own version of the meeting without consulting the rest of the committee. So basically, he blows up the lie. And the standoff that follows produces the March 14, 1951 Treasury-Fed Accord, the agreement that built the firewall between political pressure and monetary policy. 75 years of dollar stability came from that one act of insurgency. The chair who got installed after the accord, William McChesney Martin, kept the firewall standing for 19 years, and Truman never forgave him. Years later, the two of them happened to cross paths on Fifth Avenue in New York. Truman looked at Martin and said one word: traitor. That's how the political class talks about the people who actually saved the dollar. Eccles used his spare key. The system worked, and the man who did the right thing got called a traitor on a Manhattan sidewalk. So, will history repeat itself? Is Powell doing the right thing? What if Powell didn't stay? Because 20 years later, the opposite took place. It's a Wednesday afternoon in October. Richard Nixon is in the Oval Office now. And he's had it with Martin, the man who's been keeping the inflation lid on for 19 years, the man Truman called a traitor. So Martin's term is ending, and Nixon picks Arthur Burns to replace him. He picks Burns specifically because he thinks Burns will be loyal. He thinks Burns will give him cheap money before the 1972 election. Burns gets sworn in, he doesn't keep a spare key, and he hands Nixon the master. Now, watch what happens. CPI inflation in 1969 is running about 5%. Bad, but manageable. By 1974, it's 11%. By 1980, 11 years after Burns walked in, it's 13.5%. The savings accounts that anchored every retiree's plan in 1969 are paying out half the purchasing power they started with by 1980. The savers who followed conventional wisdom, pay off the house, keep cash in the bank, trust the system, they got destroyed. Their solvency evaporated. The people who got rich in that decade did one thing. They borrowed money at fixed rates, and they bought hard assets, real estate, gold, anything tangible. While the cash savers watched their solvency evaporate, the real estate operators watched their mortgages shrink in real terms while their rents and home values inflated. Inflation arbitrage, the textbook play. It built fortunes that decade. And here's the part that should cause you to pause and evaluate your next move. Same setup is loading right now. Trump-Warsh isn't a metaphor for Nixon Burns. No, it's the same architecture. A president who wants cheap money, a new chair who's been promising regime change out loud, and an ongoing chair who's seen the movie before and won't leave the theater because he knows how it ends. Now, I can't prove what comes next, but JP Morgan can, and they're publishing it for the people who can afford to read their report. 333 families, average net worth $1.6 billion. Here's what they're actually doing with their money right now. The JP Morgan Private Bank Global Family Office report came out in February, and 64% of those families named interest rates as the biggest risk to their portfolio. 61% named inflation. These are the people the system actually tells the truth to. So what are they doing? Well, they're not staying the course. They're not in the 0.38% savings account that the FDIC says is the national average. They're running 60% of their portfolios in alternatives, twice the average exposure to real estate and hedge funds. And Cambridge Associates, the institutional consulting firm the ultra-wealthy use, tells its clients flat out, investors should remain underweight the US dollar. In other words, they're telling the rich to get out of dollars, and they're telling them quietly. You see, your fee-based advisor reads the same Cambridge report. He just doesn't tell you, and there's 3 reasons why. First, liability. If he tells you to act on Fed policy speculation and he's wrong, he gets sued. 2, the business model. Defensive moves mean liquidating positions, which means smaller paychecks. And 3, the blind spot. Most advisors were trained in the 1990s and the 2010s era of Fed credibility. They've never operated in a politicized Fed environment. They literally don't know what to tell you. And look, I'm just a guy who buys houses for a living. I never thought I'd be on YouTube reading from the JP Morgan Family Office report. I didn't even know the thing existed 24 months ago. But the data is the data. While you're being told to stay calm, the people who can afford to be calm are quietly moving 60% of their money out of the dollar and into hard assets. That's not paranoia. That's the playbook. Which means the question isn't whether to act. The question is which one of the 3 specific moves you make this week, before Powell hands over the building on May 15th, before Warsh's first meeting on June 16th, before the window closes. Well, there's 3 moves. Pick one. Move number 1, tighten the basics. This is the version for the retiree who doesn't want to make any major moves but wants to stop bleeding from the obvious leaks. Pull your most recent bank statement out of the kitchen drawer right now. Look at the savings interest rate printed on the page. If it says anything under 1%, you're in that 0.38% crowd. So open a new tab. Search Top High Yield Savings May 2026. Pick one paying 4% or better. Move the money. Same FDIC protection. 10 times the return. I mean, on $50,000 of idle cash, that single 15-minute move recovers about $2,000 a year. Liquidity restored. Done. I posted the 3 accounts that I use at stackmybanks.com. Move 2, defensive structuring. This is the war chest move. A portion of your liquid assets converted to physical precious metals as a hedge against the Fed losing credibility. There's a link in the description for hedgethefed.com because it's easy to make mistakes buying precious metals, and that resource will help you make smarter decisions. Look into a HELOC or a fallback line of credit to set up now, while underwriting is still normal, before Warsh-era volatility tightens lending. And I'll put some links for those resources below for you also, in case you need them. And for substantial home equity, protecting the deed inside an LLC or trust structure so a politicized environment doesn't expose your fortress to lawsuit risk. Active defense, gotta layer it. Move 3, strategic offense. Now this is inflation arbitrage in textbook form. Consider using existing home equity to acquire cash flowing rental real estate with fixed rate leverage. Consider it, because the debt shrinks in real terms while the asset and the rents inflate. If you don't like it, I get it, but it is the same play the family offices are running at twice the average exposure right now. Different link in the description for the turnkey real estate side of that. In fact, you know what? I'll just put it all into one checklist to make it easy for you. But pick one of the 3, at least one. Take one action this week. The information, it's on the table. And look, Powell didn't refuse to leave because of an investigation. He refused to leave because he saw Warsh promise to reopen the 1951 Accord, the document that protects your dollar from political interference. And he understood that the only way to defend it was to stay in the building and keep a spare key. So you have 2 paths you could follow. Path A, do nothing. Leave your savings where it is. Trust your advisor. Wait and see what happens after May 15th. I mean, if history rhymes with 1969, you'll have less buying power every year for the next 10. Or path B, take action. Pick one of the 3 moves I just laid out, at least one. The checklist is in the description below for you. Do it this week, before May 15th, while the rules are still the ones you know. Here's the thing though, even if you do everything right this week, move the cash, build the war chest, lock in the fortress, there's still the biggest part of your money that I haven't talked about yet. What this means for your home. Because while we've been watching Powell and Warsh fight over the value of the dollar at the top of the system, inflation has been doing something to the dollar at the bottom of it. Specifically, the dollar sitting inside your home equity. And it's more than just inflation that's stealing your equity faster than your home value is growing. And that's why I pulled this video out right here for you to watch next. I walk through exactly how all 3 different mechanisms are working against you. In plain English, with no Fed jargon, it'll be really easy to understand and give you 3 specific things that you can do this week to slow the bleeding. So watch this one next, and I'll see you on the other side. God loves you, and so do I. Take care.
Yeah, so I'll definitely make sure to follow up. As you guys see, my background is gone. My wonderful news background is gone. Something happened and my stuff got disconnected. My mic got disconnected. I was like, my goodness, just technology is what it is, right? So I hope you guys can hear me okay. My mic is still on. Yay. But things happen. Things happen. So with that, I want to get into this next video before we close out for our prayer with Friday. I think it's very inspirational.
Blow your mind.
And in The Lion King, they showed you how life works. Simba lost his father at an early age and lost who he was. Some prophet named Rafiki hello. And he told Simba he had a message for him. Simba thought his father was dead. And the monkey said, your father's not dead. He's still alive. and you've seen him lit up. No, what? He says, I know your father. He said, watch this. He said, follow me and I'll take you to your father. So Rafiki takes off running. Simba ain't thinking about nothing else but seeing his father. He's running through the weeds. He's running through the adversity. And all of a sudden, Rafiki shows up at some water. Look, there's your father. And he looked in the water and saw his image. And when he saw his image, he said, that's not my father. And the monkey said, look harder. And when he looked harder, he looked again, and all of a sudden, he's looking at a reflection, but then he sees his father. His father's message was to him, Simba, remember who you are. And once he remembered who he was, he went back to his home, not as Simba, but as a king. And if Disney has enough revelation to know that if a person can see that the image of the Father is in them, they'll step into their calling. Why is the church so blind to that? Because when we preach, we don't preach that we're the image of God. We teach a message to be blessed by him, but never look at the reflection. We teach baptism as just a water experience instead of look harder. Until we see the Father, life has and will father you. You'll be nurtured by every single heartbreak. You'll either become introverted or a fighter. And it's because you're learning to protect yourself because you have no father to protect you.
If you agree, type amen and let me know what you think in the comments. Also,
Yeah. And that's a good lesson to learn, right? It's interesting the things that you can learn. You know, a lot of people, look, I am not a fan of Disney, but I did like The Lion King, you know, and there were a lot of good messages in there. Some weren't good, right? But we take the good and the bad. But just looking at that small snippet, he's right. You know, we sometimes are not taught in church to look at the reflection and know that we are made in God's image. We are not God. We're made in his image. Our Father is right there. He's given divine purpose to each and every one of us to succeed at whatever gifts he's given us, because each one of us are unique. We all have a different purpose, right? And what I mean by that, I shouldn't say purpose. We all have different talents, right? The purpose in the, you know, the commission that we were given is to make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them everything I've commanded you to the very end of the age. That's the command. That is the charge, right? But each one of us have talents and abilities that we've been given that are unique to us from our Father, who is our protector. But when we look in the mirror, do we see him? Or do you just see the reflection of yourself? And then, as that pastor was saying, you go into protective mode to protect yourself, to do everything yourself instead of really resting in God, knowing he's God, knowing that you do have a heavenly Father that wants to do everything to protect you. And he's just saying, trust me. I got you. But remember who you are in all of this. So with that, let's get into our prayer. So God, thank you so much for this week. We want to thank you so much for all the blessings that you've given us and how we go into our new beginning, Father, and just really remembering the reflection that we see. We need to remember to see you in us, God, that you are there, that you are protecting us through everything that is going on, whether it's financial, educational. Father, some of us are working, some of us aren't working, some of us are having heartaches, some of us are going through things with our children, God, but in everything, you have us. In everything, you are protecting us. In everything, you are loving us, God. And I pray that all of our hearts are seeking you and resting in knowing that you are God. And all we need to do is be still. So you want to thank you for everything that you've done, everything that you're doing, and everything that you are going to do. And it is in your Son, Yeshua's name, that we pray and give thanks. Amen. So thank you guys for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News. We will be back on Tuesday, not Monday. We'll be back on Tuesday. So I look forward to seeing you guys on Tell It All Tuesday next week. And thank you again so much for joining me here. And remember, stay well, stay focused, and stay unfiltered. We'll see you in the next one. Let's see.